This is Sarah Tebow, and I am the host of the Side Woo podcast. Join me for conversations about mental health and metaphysical issues from the lens of living a more creative, fulfilling, and connected life. From the physical to the metaphysical and beyond, welcome to the Side Woo. All right, so we have Holly Coley here today, and I'm super excited. Holly is a Bay Area-based artist and looks really good in pretty much every haircut she has ever had. You can go to YouTube and confirm that. And yeah, hi, welcome, Holly.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
Yay! So where are you right now, just for the listeners?
I'm in my kitchen. I'm at home in Glen Park.
With beautiful French country yellow walls. I love it. It's super
Yeah, we
pretty.
did paint the kitchen yellow.
Yeah,
Definitely.
it's great. I mean, and then you have all your like little ceramic homewares. I just always feel really envious of ceramicists because they can make really functional hardware items without much effort at all. And then you save yourself one, having ugly basic hardware for your home, and then two, just save all the money.
Yeah, I tend to, I have like this is a mug that I made in Maine at a residency a few years ago that I really like. But lately I've been trying to collect work made by like my friends, like Sarah Creston Studios in Oakland, makes like beautiful production dinnerware, because I don't really make dinner. I can make you plates and stuff, but it's not like a beautiful set. Like the way Sarah's work is.
You can even make like hooks or door handles or things that like you don't think of as being ceramics. But then I've gone to like Kathy Lou back when she lived in Richmond. Like, I'm like, oh, all these little knobs are all things that she made probably in 2 seconds in her studio. And it made me so jealous because I was like, I want that. I want cute little accoutrement made.
Kathy's so incredible. Like, she basically like helped me get a job as like the department head at the Crucible in West Oakland when she was stepping down from that position. And it was just amazing to see like everything that she had done for that department. She's incredible. Yeah.
Well, and she's now at Harvard where she belongs. So.
And she has a baby. She just had a little baby.
Little nugget.
Little baby.
Well, and what about you? First question, what sign are you? I know I should know this because I've been to your birthday a number of times. It's in the summer. Is that right?
I'm an Aries.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So not really summer, spring. So that makes sense for you. And you're a huge karaoke aficionado / just music lover. So how does that align with your Aries-ness?
I don't know a ton about my Aries-ness, except for it makes my life kind of hard. A lot of the time I'm like, so much passion, so fickle, like
Very
I
spicy.
Need to have it my way, like definitely like control issues with like that
really?
stuff. Yeah. I just feel like with the way that I want things done sometimes, like, it must be done like this.
Well, and you run your own ceramic studio, so being in control seems like a benefit when you're running your own business.
Yeah, because then I can just have things like the way that I like them, and so far other people like them too.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And what would you say, if any, is like your spiritual belief system? Like, do you believe in ghosts, past life, religion, life after death, reincarnation?
I was raised like Christian, but my mom like had a very non-Christian way of living, where she had like lots of boyfriends and that like lived with us and stuff, like out of wedlock, and just like weird preachers that, I don't know, it was just like in Southern California, we would go to a lot of different churches, and that kind of really turned me off to organized religion.
Yeah.
Um, it was just, like, super judgmental and kind of not for me, and as soon as I was, like, old enough to, like, decide not to go to church, I was like, "No, I don't wanna go." Um, for me, I think, like, these days, I'm more of, like, a spiritualist. I think, like, definitely believe in ghosts, like, the afterlife, maybe. I mean, I'd be interested to learn more. I definitely have, like, studied like, when I was a teenager, I studied witchcraft, and I had, like, a witch name, and I had, like, a very small coven, and we, like, did, like, little
Can
rituals,
you
and
say what your witch name was?
I think I think it was Sidonia. That was my witch name. You can
Oh, how'd you choose that?
I think it was in a book, like, it was in a book of witch names,
Okay.
like, I would check books out from the library on witchcraft, and my sometimes my mom would like, one time my mom found the books in my room, and she, like, said that she burnt them and said a prayer over the
Oh,
ashes, and I was
no.
like, "Mom,
That's pretty
those are
witchy,
library"
Mom.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Well, it was like that kind of fundamentalist Christian, like, where I come from, where parents did, like, burn like, rock records and, like,
Oh
books,
my
like, that
god.
they thought were, like, unholy, shit like that. Lots of, like, youth pastors with, like, 12-string guitars, shit like that.
Whoa. Wait, you might have said, where did you grow up again?
And Yucaipa, it's in the high desert of Southern California.
Wow, okay. So much to ask about. Okay, so for the witchcraft, what traditions were you working in? Like, was it, like, Italian?
Do it. I mean, I think it's what I was doing was, like, closer to, like, Wiccanism.
Okay, and
Yeah.
and that's when there's, like, a structure to the coven and people are, like, or what is that about? Like,
I mean, it was very remedial, like, we would just like, we would get, like, a silver chalice from the thrift store
yeah,
and, like, drink wine out of it and have, like, different colored candles to signify, like, different, intentions.
yeah. And did you feel like
It was
anything crazy happened while you were doing your spells together?
mm, I mean, I think it just kind of makes you feel, like, close with the people that you're doing it with, and it makes you feel like you have something of your own. I feel like as a teenager, I, like, felt very isolated and weird.
Yeah.
Um, so it just kind of gave me a sense of belonging, which I think, like, a lot of young people, like, are looking for.
Mhm.
But I think, like, what was cool about it was that I could like you can kind of set intentions for, like, dreams, like, you could, like, if you focus on wanting to have a certain type of dream and make a little, like, sachet spell and, like, put it under your pillow when you go to bed that night,
Yeah.
like, make you dream about your crush, which is what you like it's what you want, just something like
And
that,
so
or to have, like
you would, like, get success with that kinda thing?
occasionally, yeah.
I remember for like learned about sachets like first during the pandemic, and I was working with this witch who lives in Scotland who was on the show called Amelia, and she runs the Carnelian Keep, and she was
Cool.
teaching this workshop on like different types of herbs and like how to use them, and so I created a little sachet with like mugwort, and then I can't remember what I did with it, but I, like, had it on me or something, like, you're supposed to kind of bless it and write a little note, and then you can put it on you or you can put it on your altar or under your pillow, and I remember, like, having this moment where I went downstairs. I was, like, cat sitting in this two-level apartment, and I went downstairs to open the door, and I swear, like, in my third eye almost, but it looked like real, one of the cats was, like, right by my feet, kinda, like, poking her nose to see what was going on, but then when I turned around and, like, kinda looked down to see her and, like, go back up the stairs, she wasn't anywhere near where my feet were, like, she would have had to, like, run up the stairs in, like, point 0.5 second. So I literally, like, had this, like, weird moment where I think she's, like, constantly, like, astral projecting as a cat, like, the owner always talks about it
Whoa.
too, where she's like, this cat is, like, going into portals and stuff because she'll just like stare off into space like all the time. But I'm like, oh my God, did that cat like project herself to my feet? And then I was so sensory like attuned because of the mugwort, because mugwort really heightens your intuition. And it was like really new for me to like use that type of thing. And I was like, "Oh my god." And so I told the teacher, Amelia, and she's like, "Time to get rid of that mugwort. Like, you need to put that away."
Yeah. That might be a little too,
Like, it was like
intense.
I either, like, hallucinated, but then the cat was at the top of the stairs. So it was like or I was, like, tuning into her energy, and she had, like, projected herself at my feet to, like, see what was there or something. I don't know what happened there, but it was really wild.
I mean, my cat passed away in February,
Yeah.
but I mean, like, I feel like I still see her out of the corner
Oh,
of my
yeah,
eye, but
cat
of course she's
ghost.
not there. But I think, like, when you lose anyone, like, you kind of still see them, or, like, you see someone in a crowd that looks like them, like, when you're grieving, like, that kind of
Mhm.
thing. Yeah.
But and, like, when you see your cat in your apartment, do you get, like, a full glimpse of her, or is it, like, a little out of the corner of your eye?
It's just out of the corner of my eye,
I think those are
or, like,
visitations. I mean, I don't know, what do you think?
I don't know, I think it's like it could be, but I mean, she was not sentimental. She was like a feral cat, so she was kind of just like, but I mean,
So
she
you had
did
her for a long
sh
time, right?
yeah, I ran her for like 11
Yeah,
years, and she definitely this was her house, like,
yeah.
we couldn't keep her out of the bedroom, and she was just like, "Let me in." She kind of was the boss a little bit,
Okay.
you know?
Well, the reason I asked because I do feel like animals show up, like, kinda on your periphery. Like, I do think they come back or, like, there's something there because. Or maybe there's a residual of her energy, like, around the house and you're, like, seeing it. I went to the Winslow house, which do you know what that is? It's in Alameda. She's, like, running an artist residency, but that place is, like, super duper haunted, and I was there with
Winslow?
Winslow House,
Let me
and
make a
I
note.
went there with Rachel Dawson, and she, had us, like, at over for some tea, and we were, like, sitting at this kitchen table. And I swear to God, I, like, saw movement on the ground, and it, like the first thing that popped into my head was this, like, dachshund, like, dog, and I'm like, because she had already told us, like, "Oh, yeah, it's a little haunted here." So I go, like, "Was there a dog that used to live here?" And she's like, "Oh, yeah." And I'm like, "Was there, like, a dachshund?" She's like, "Yep." And so it
Whoa.
was like the dog was, like, kinda, like, zipping around, but it was like a moment where I just saw, like, a little scurry. And so, I don't know. I mean, if humans can come back and haunt, like, why couldn't animals, you know? I don't know.
Yeah, I think I definitely believe in I guess I do believe in an afterlife because like a lot of people, I've lost people in my life, and I still, like, really miss them and think about them, and sometimes I something will happen where I'm like, "Oh, I think that person is, like, saying hi to me, or,
Oh,
like,
interesting.
telling me I did
Do
a
you have
good
an
job."
example that you'd wanna share?
I think it's mostly just, like, super like, just, like, a feeling. It's not really something that I see, but it's like I can kind of feel my childhood friend, my, like, closest childhood friend, that I had gone to kindergarten with, like, uh, he, in his adult life, he became addicted to drugs and eventually, like, passed away due to an overdose, and, like,
Sorry.
like, when you grow up with someone and they're, like, just kind of under your skin, like, for the rest of your life in this weird way, and that's kind of how he is, I guess.
Yeah, so he just kinda shows up, like, here and there.
Yeah.
Oh, that's sweet. So how has your upbringing, like, shown up in your art? Because, like, when did you move to the Bay Area?
I mean, I moved to the Bay Area in the late 90s. Uh, like, yeah, I just kind of, like, put my stuff in a garbage bag and got on a plane.
Yeah.
I had gone
You
to,
didn't drive up here because that probably wouldn't be that long of a drive.
I mean, I didn't get my license till I was 25 because I
What?
just
Okay, I don't
yeah, I mean,
understand people who don't have, like, a compulsive need to, like, get the F out of their house. So you never felt like, "I have to get out of here, let me drive away."
well, I did. I mean, I left Yucaipa the day after I graduated from high
Yeah,
school, but
you just didn't drive
even
yourself.
I just went to the Bay Area where you don't need a car,
Okay.
you know? But then I had to get it because my mom had an operation and I had to go, like, to Colorado and cart her around.
Oh, okay.
But I when I was a teenager, I went to, like, I got a grant to go to the California State Summer School for the Arts, like CISA at CalArts. Did you go to that too?
No.
No? I I'm always like, "Alum."
Oh,
But
no.
I went to that, and when I was there, my roommate there, this other artist who was working in film at that time invited me to come live with her and her mother in Marin in Fairfax
Very
when I
cool.
graduated from high school, and she's like, "Yeah, come, come to Marin, we'll move to the city and be artists." And I was like, "Sweet," because there's no money for college,
Yeah.
so I just, like,
What year was that?
graduated. That was, like,
Okay,
1996.
so good time to move to the Bay Area, like, a lot of interesting
Yeah,
stuff happening and .com
like, I did
1.0.
well, yeah, and I had visited once before, and I was like, "The weather is amazing, and everyone is wearing black." I was like, "This is where I need to go."
It's, like, cold and moody and, yeah, gothy, so you're, like, witchy teen self.
I was a super goth back then, for sure,
Oh my
like, I
god,
was a
amazing.
yeah.
So, like, how did that manifest for your like, black lipstick, black hair? What was the
I definitely dyed my hair black for a really long time, and I would cut it, um, like, old men would tell me all the time that I reminded them of Louise Brooks from, like, Pandora's
oh,
Box.
okay, I don't know.
Um, Check it out, it's gorgeous. Um, but for me, like, I think, like, I was more into, I guess, like, more of an '80s goth, like, I really loved, like, the Chameleons and, like, Shadow Project and Christian Death and, like, punk rock. So, there was, like, leather belts with, like, chains on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just being a teenage girl wearing, like, a lingerie top kind of, and then, like, a Victorian jacket
Yeah.
that I got from the thrift store, and, like, there were velvet gowns. Um, I would wear a full face of makeup every single day, which is something I just haven't done in a
Would
long
you do,
time.
like, thick foundation or something, or would you do white paint? Like, what was your makeup look like?
It was
What
just
was
I
the
mean, I feel
look
like
that you were turning?
I was, like, a natural goth.
Okay. So, it
So
wasn't
I
like
wasn't,
goth
like
in summer where you're like
I mean, I'll send you some pictures and
share on the but
you can
yeah, if you wanna describe, but yeah, we can share some.
sure, it was, like, black or blue hair or, like, hot pink hair, like, chokers, velvet. I had this, like, polyester, like, pleated full-length skirt that had, like, a matching, almost kind of like beetle suit coat, but it, like, buttoned
Oh,
all the way
yeah.
up, and it was really tight, and I just, like, loved it, and I was wearing it in the desert where it was, like, 110 degrees, but I, like,
Oh
didn't
my god,
care.
amazing.
It was
You
amazing. I
were
would,
goth
like,
in
during
heat, like, in the heat.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of goths in rural places where it's hot because I think it's just a denial of, like, the environment, but
Like,
also, like,
complete
factors in your
rejection of
home.
reality, like,
Yeah,
I
you're
will
just
be
all,
somewhere else.
"Uh-uh,
Oh,
just waiting, gonna get out of here." Yeah, I was like that.
yeah. So, once you got to the Bay Area, because when I met you, you were the person your mom warned you about. Like, I am guessing, like, you're, like, the one with, like, the rock and roll records, you stay out late to go karaokeing, your boyfriend, partner is a rock musician, like, you're an artist. You It seems a little bit like you became the person that you were warned about, like, through your upbringing based on what you said about them, like, burning your witch books and your albums and stuff.
Yeah, I guess,
Like,
like
in an awesome way, like, in a way that we all, like,
yeah,
wish we could have done, like or I never had that same I was, like, encouraged to be that person, but, and then I wasn't
that's all.
as a rebellion. I was, like, deeply uncool because I was like, "Screw you and your rock and roll music. I'm gonna listen to the Backstreet Boys." That was my
I mean, I like
rebellion was, like,
Backstreet Boys.
I was surrounded by the best of, like, the '70s and '80s rock hits and the Beatles, and I was like, "I'm gonna listen to terrible po top 40s."
I mean, that's totally natural to just forge your own path like that. I totally
Reject
get that.
completely whatever you were forced to experience,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. I mean, that makes total sense. Yeah. Yeah.
But, yeah, so, like, what was cultivating your own identity, like, away from the desert, like, for you? Because I feel like Aries, not to get back to your astrology, is all about the self and the presentation of the self. It's like ruled by the sun. It's the first house. It's very much about identity and like how you, outward appearances. So I feel like whatever else your chart looks like, there is something about that where it's like forging your own identity and like cultivating it as part of your journey in this lifetime.
I mean, I think, like, when I got to the Bay Area, I was still goth for, like, a long time. I used to, like there was actually a really awesome goth scene in San Francisco at that time, like, places that don't exist anymore, like the Trocadero used to have a lot of fun nights, and the Maritime Hall, and I even, like, went to, like, a dance party at, like, a casket resale shop on 3rd Street,
What
like, a few times,
what
and
cross
that was
street
pretty crazy.
was that on?
I think it was, like, in the dog patch, like,
I
back
was gonna
then,
say.
like, when there was nothing out there, like, that was pretty.
So, what would you, like, be able to dance in the caskets or something, or
You were just I mean, it was kind of like it just was kind of a '90s experience because you had all these, like, kind of hokey things all around you, and you're like, "Look at where we are, we're going to it's a shop, but it's coffins,"
Right.
like,
Yeah.
and it isn't like this is just, like, kind of a wild experience, to be like, "And this is where the dance party is."
Mhm.
But I think back then, there were a lot more, like, alternative spaces, where people
Yeah.
would just kind of have events.
I feel like in some ways, the Bay Area really culturally peaked in the '90s. That's gonna be a little harsh sounding for people who live there, but or, like, San Francisco proper, because I feel like the people who had the most fun were there during that time and who had these, like, super cheap apartments and, like, a lot of, like, the older people are still kinda hanging on to their, like, '90s, like, dress and music and, like, lifestyle, like, through Burning Man and, like, kind of this, like yeah, the warm up and the cool down and the mid "It's not Burning Man yet" parties, like, they're all doing all kinds of
Well, I just think that, like, Burning Man has become, like, this umbrella for lots of things, and I don't feel like it should be. I mean, I feel like when people think about, like, art that's outside, they're like, "Oh, yeah, like Burning Man." I'm like, "No, it's something called land
it's
art.
just
It's
art
been
that
around for,
happens to
like."
be outside, but has nothing to do
Yeah,
with Burning Man, yeah.
yeah, yeah. No one's gonna, like, try to ask you if they can barter, like, a massage for a hot dog or whatever.
Totally. Yeah, like, no tits for tats, like, literal tits for tat.
There was a sex club that used to be, like, on Mission. Was it on Mission? It was, like, by 14th.
The gym.
Which
It's
one?
called the gym, like the red gym, or
Before it was called
the
the gym, it
armory.
was called it's, like, 3 stories.
Yeah. I thought it was called, like, the gym, or it was in that big red brick building, right?
Yeah. Before it was that, it was called something else, and I went there a few times with my roommate in the early 2000s, like, when I was because I 'cause I've lived all over the city. I used to live but at that time, I was living in Hayes Valley.
Okay, wait, let's go
Um,
through and say, like, what neighborhoods. This might not be that fun for listeners, but because 'cause I've lived in a
yeah.
lot of neighborhoods. So, chronologically, say your neighborhoods, and then I'll see if I've also lived there.
Okay. Um, so when I first moved to San Francisco, I lived at Turk and Hyde and the Tenderloin for 5 years in a
Okay.
studio, but
I've lived in Tenderloin.
okay. Rose Street in Hayes Valley before it was gentrified.
I lived in Hayes Valley. I lived on Hayes. It was kind of Panhandle. Is that technically what you're talking about, or?
This is like
Oh,
Rose Street is one of those little side streets when you're taking Octavia Boulevard up from Market Street. If you like turn there,
okay, I didn't live there. That's nice over there.
it wasn't nice when I lived there. It was like kind of scary. It was like it was dark at night and there wasn't a lot going on.
Okay, keep going.
I've lived on like 26th Street and by Mission. And I've lived on 18th Street and Mission.
So just like the Mission and a couple different places.
Yeah, yeah, I like living in the Mission.
Have you done
And now
Bernal,
I've never lived in Bernal, but
like
I live in
Glen
Glen Park.
Park? What about
But
like the Sunset, the
no, I never lived
Richmond?
there.
I lived in the Presidio for a
Ooh,
year at the SFAI dorms. Um,
how was that?
it was amazing, but it was funny because everything you do there is federally guarded. So because it's like federal land. And
Oh
so
yeah,
you
yeah.
have a bunch of art students in there doing like illegal drugs, among other things. And like literally at
Mhm.
any moment, we could have gotten the entire school like kicked out of the housing by like breaking one law. And we definitely had a junkie who was like a friend of a friend somehow get to stay in my apartment of 4 people and stayed for spring break and ended up like in that short period of time, like completely destroying the room. Like it smelled like
Ooh,
shit, like shooting up all the time in there. And then we ended up like locking him out, like saying he couldn't stay and then locking him out. And he like broke in through a window and like we couldn't call the cops because if they found out that someone was doing that there, we would have all gotten in really big trouble. So, yeah, so that was really interesting, but it was gorgeous. It was like right by the
wait,
Lombard.
did he just like give up and
He
go
just ended
away?
up going away. Yeah. Which
Oh,
was
okay.
kind of sad now that I think about it. It's like, what was he going to do? But also, I don't know what he did before. So, where did he come
Yeah.
from and where did he go? We don't know.
There's only so much you can do sometimes.
No.
If it's, like, gonna jeopardize your living situation, you have to make a choice.
Yeah, I wasn't feeling bad. It was more like, who let this guy stay here without knowing him? Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, other than that, it was gorgeous. Like it was really, really misty. And there would always be
Mhm.
these like nature moments, like coyotes, like that were giant, like kind of follow you home. And the whole bus situation was a bummer because it was like kind of by the
Yeah,
marina. So you could
yeah.
wait for the bus or walk like 30 minutes to the closest bus. I literally, when I lived there, thought the mission was like another planet because it felt like it was so far. It's just really funny now because living in LA, I'm like, nowhere in SF is that far. Like it's like 20 minutes and you're like, oh my God, that's awesome. Whereas when you're there,
Yeah,
you're like, "Oh my god, it's gonna take me 20 minutes to drive there." But anyway,
yeah.
yeah, so I just was, like, curious to see if we had lived in the like, I lived in the Haight. Did you ever live in the Haight? Yeah.
No.
You kinda sticked around the Mission, it sounds like, once you got settled in
Yeah,
there.
yeah, I like living in the Mission because that's where I really like to go see live music. I
Mhm.
like to go to shows, and that, like or just go to dive bars. Always been a big fan of dive bars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I wanna talk about your store. You run Pinckney Clay in the Outer Mission. Well, it
Mhm.
kind of is like Bernal Flats almost.
Technically, people call it Bernal Heights.
Okay, yeah, that I was gonna say some of the stores over there say Bernal Heights on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, where's it located? And like, how did you what has the shift been? Because you're an artist and then you had to become this like business owner. So like what has the shift been like taking that on as your own? Like maybe you can tell me a little bit about the journey of that.
It has been a journey, Sarah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, something about me is that, I kind of got into the business of running ceramic art studios for other people, through, like Kathy Lou, who was, just, hey, do you want to go teach clay like at this elementary school? Like, or hey, do you want to like run the ceramics department at like the Crucible? She was just like, hey, like she was always like a big resource for jobs when she lived here. She'd just be like, hey, they just kind of share information. But at that time I was like teaching at like different schools and like running the clay department at the Crucible. And like the commute for like going to West Oakland and back was kind of bumming me out because also my art studio was at the Crucible.
Mm.
And so I would just stay there super late, and then I would just be walking to West Oakland BART by myself super late. And then when you're waiting for BART, you are kind of a captive audience to like lots of different like types of people that are having different experiences. So sometimes, you'd have to sit there and be like cool to like some dude who's like tripping on acid and be like, yeah, like I get
That's
it.
such a generous
Like,
way of putting it.
well, it's like you're just stuck there. You may as well just be like, because also they probably are like kind of need someone to talk.
But what you said about, like, being an audience to people having different types of experiences, I mean, that is what you're doing
That's
there.
kind of what you're
Yeah.
doing, yeah. But then I was like walking up Mission Street, and I saw in 2016 I saw a pottery studio opening by my house. And I was like, holy shit, this is a place opening right by my house. And at that time, I was working in primarily in mixed media, like water based, like painting, like, and that's kind of what I was doing and showing at that time. And the owner of the studio, Pinckney, like when she at the opening party, I came and she knew my work, and she was like, "You're hired," and
Awesome.
I was like,
Whoa.
"Cool."
Sight
And
unseen.
so because she needed, well, she knew my painting work, like my visual art, and she was like a fan, and she was like, "Oh yeah, cool, like come work for me." And so I just ended up helping her run that shop. And at that time I was pretty plugged into like the ceramics community in the Bay Area, so I knew a lot of like people that I was interested in having as teachers. And then just kind of worked for her for a few years. And then she's an art director, so she kind of would just basically work on these other projects, and I would just be running the studio for her, and she just wouldn't be there a lot of the time in the end. And then she would just kind of come and go because she just had a lot going on. And then the pandemic happened, and she just like started Zoom dating this dude she went to college with. And um
Get it, girl.
they
Get it.
yeah, they got it. Like a lot of people, they're like, let's like I think he flew from New York to San Francisco to have like like a real date,
Wow.
and like this is when it was like dangerous to fly, I think before the vaccine. So he flew wearing like a hazmat suit
Mhm.
and like goggles and like a big
It's a
respirator.
little bit of a red
And
flag, but okay. We
well,
were all
yeah, I mean,
struggling, so
it was someone that she had gone to like to college with, so she already knew
ooh,
him.
okay, wow. I
So
was
it
gonna say,
wasn't,
like, if you don't know the
yeah.
person and only know them from Zoom,
No,
I know we were
she knew
all
him.
struggling, but that's intense. Yeah.
It was like it was like a,
That's cool.
I
So
don't know,
she
like,
found love and
yeah,
he
yeah,
braved
she totally found love.
the pandemic.
And she was like, "I'm moving to New Jersey. I will sell you the studio and give you a loan to buy it." And
Oh,
that's what happened.
damn.
Um,
All right.
so I was like, "Cool, my own studio, worst time possible, awesome." But from there, I just kind of did everything myself. Like I taught all the like online classes, and I like did all the tech work,
And did
um,
you have a
and then eventually,
built-in roster of people like who are already taking classes so you didn't have to worry about like yeah, like how did you keep afloat because I feel like it's hard if you didn't have anyone to
well,
get interest.
the studio is members. So like we've had like a core group of members since the beginning. Like we have people that are members
Mm,
that have been members since 2016, and some
yeah,
people do come and go, but there are a few members that have just like, for whatever reason, have decided to stay.
yeah.
And so those, like when you have members, then you have like a steady income for rent. But it's definitely like having to create a schedule. So only like a limited number of people could be in there at once, and like,
This
oh,
is Dior. She just
oh,
like
Dior,
clawed
I
her way up
love it.
into my lap
Oh,
with her razor sharp claws. Anyway, I'm listening.
but yeah, no, but then it was just like, then just doing that and, like buying plexiglass and making barriers, to like hang in between
Right.
people as they were
Because yeah, clay you
working.
can't
And
do so much remotely,
yeah, well, I did do like
like firing.
people would pick up kits and we would do a Zoom, which I think was a very special time to connect with like the people who signed up for those classes, because like I really wanted to create like a safe space where people could actually like talk about what it was
Yeah.
like where they were,
Yeah.
instead of just like, because working with clay is a very like cathartic, like human, um expressive like medium, so it
Mhm.
just kind of invites like a lot of conversation. It's a very communal like craft.
Mhm. And so, I mean, it's so much work though. Like, you're going from being an artist and kind of supporting her business. So, like, the pressure's a little bit off to like, you're the owner now. So, like, what was that journey like internally? Were you just like, oh my God? Or were you really excited? Or like, how did you kind of figure out like what you were going to do? In terms of just strategy, like you really have to have like a marketing strategy and really know your budget and really like and staffing needs if there are any and dealing with the pandemic. I mean, that's all like a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot. It still is. You just kind of do a lot of learning as you go along. I took a lot of online business
You
classes
did.
through like the Rent Center, which is like a fantastic organization here in San Francisco that supports small business owners that are like women or people of color or marginalized communities. And they offer like grant resources and mentorships, and they'll even um, they like supply you with interns. Like they're just so incredible. Like anybody like looking for help with their small business, I would definitely check
It's
them
called
out.
Rec
I
Center.
It's called the Renaissance Center or the
Renaissance.
Ren Center. I think they're having a fundraiser soon. If anybody wants to donate to that, I
Oh,
certainly did. Um, but they're just a fantastic organization.
got it. So you like basically got a certificate in business so that you could.
It's not. I mean,
No,
I
I
got
mean,
a
I'm
certificate.
kind of joking.
But
Like,
oh
but
yeah,
you did have to like take business classes. You didn't feel like, oh yeah, I just know what to do.
yeah. Like I've had people train me on QuickBooks. Like I talked to a lot of people. There, like every county has an office that's for small business support,
Yeah.
where you can actually get free training for all of these things too.
Yeah. Yeah. So you would say recommend that. Cause I think like as an artist, you're kind of used to doing things like I've struggled like this last couple of years has been super hard for LA people. I don't know if the Bay Area is experiencing the same crush because of the inflation, but it's like it's been
It's
so
pretty bad. I
hard.
mean,
And so yeah, you're like all your skills around juggling your money and budgeting and figuring out like how to really be creative about generating income, I feel like have been put to the test, like all my resources and my like anything that I thought that I had like to give is like being really tested. So I imagine during the pandemic it was like that too. You're like no one had ever dealt with something like that before. And so you're just kind of reinventing yourself like every couple weeks or
yeah, I mean, like everyone's always like, you should pivot. So it's almost like you're all pivot, 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 pivot
yeah.
all the time, every day. You're just like,
So like what would
and
be like a pivot that you did? Like what's an example where you're like,
like I guess like the online classes, having like seasonal online classes to like attract to drum up business. Like, um, I invited some of my favorite artists to give online workshops during that time so that I could like pay people, other artists to to teach. Like I had Rainiel de Rosario do a clay fruit sculpting workshop
Awesome.
that was online during that time. I'm probably forgetting other stuff. I mean, I've been because I'm a teacher, I was just like, well, I'll just teach everything, but also like invite other people to teach stuff too. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was kind of like making art kits to be like, here's an art kit, you can buy it um, with this class, and this is what you get. And then you drop off all the work and we'll fire it. Or like we just straight up like we're selling art kits that you could just buy or with air dry clay. So I had to like do all this like research into like finding an air dry clay that wasn't total garbage, like stuff like that.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense.
But I or then like doing like digital team builds, so you have like you make all these kits and then you have to like mail them all out to people all over the world and then have like a Zoom with them. Which was like pretty fun, but also kind of exhausting. Like I'm not really doing stuff like that anymore. But that's a good example of a pivot, I guess,
Yeah.
where you're just like, what can I do to make money? And before Pinckney moved away, she was actually supporting the studio, like, and giving us like small paychecks, um, through like taking donations from fans of the studio, or I think her own money, or she also was making, oh, I mean, she's just an incredible ceramicist, and she was just making a lot of work and selling it online, and
So
and then
cool.
just
That
like
funding it
giving,
that way.
yeah,
Nice. Oh, wow.
yeah.
Um, and so now are online classes still doing well, or would you say that, like, people are really sick of online classes?
I mean, I don't have any online
Yeah.
classes. I think people, it was like that certain point where people are like, I am done being on Zoom. I want to be in
Yeah.
person. Like everyone was just like in person. Like I want to go somewhere. I want to leave my house, which is like totally makes sense.
Yeah. Especially with
Yeah.
ceramics.
But I have heard stories about like graduate people graduating during that time from art school and like
Oh, yeah.
paying the full tuition at CCA and not being able to go in and use the studio. Like
Yeah.
that just kind of blew my mind.
Yeah. That's a whole conversation that's too depressing to get into. Um,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about you've been like pivoting again, if you will, into being more of a like instead of being a craft fair artist, you're now starting to show at galleries. What has that experience been like? And was that your first show that you did at Eleanor Harwood recently?
Well, I've been
Or
showing like,
it was like a
I
two-person
mean,
show, right? Uh,
yeah, it was a 2-person show at Eleanor Harwood in July. It was Liz Walsh, like her paintings
yeah.
and these like strawberry centaurs that I made and some new classic vases. But I think for me, like I have shown in galleries before. Like I always just kind of had my art practice, but spending all of your time making these like giant expensive works of art, you're like, who's going to buy those? Like, how do you get into that market? But I think what I really loved about clay when I first started getting into it was the immediacy of being able to like put it in people's hands and they could take it home because you could make multiples, you could make a lot of it, and you could sell it for like not that much money.
Mhm. And
Like
it's super
the
functional. I like the
Yeah.
functionality piece.
Yeah. So it was just kind of like, I think like that's what initially was like super attractive to me, but it was also like if you work with clay, it's very expensive. You need kilns, you need the materials are very expensive. Like I kind of went from, working in like watercolor and gouache and like different types of ink to just working with clay and finding a studio space and doing that. And it just kind of like, how do I support this practice? I sell at craft fairs because like then I always just found like it's so incredible to be able to make things, and I want to make more things. How do I do that? I sell them. So it was like, it has to like, there has to be some type of cycle. Otherwise, you're like that person in the garage with like a whole bunch of stuff, you know? So, so I was doing that, but like, I definitely like had shows where I showed like watercolors and ceramics, like at there used to be like that place A Light on 18th on 17th by Mission, and it was like a store in the front. It was a store for like camping stuff, like designer camping stuff, and in the
Oh,
back they had a
oh,
gallery,
that's cool.
and I had a show there, and I called it like the Spirit Canoe, and it was like wash paintings of like my ghosts and different like aquatic scenes. And then I just had like ceramic pieces. So I've been kind of doing that that was probably in like 2015. So I've been kind of showing here and there in like little spaces for a while.
Yeah.
And
But
then
I think like
definitely,
you had expressed to me that you were excited to move away from like that kind of split model where it was actually the only function of the gallery was like for commercial art instead of it being like and a store for other things. Not that it doesn't
there's nothing wrong with
it's
that.
just different, it's just a different model. I think um some galleries here are kind of getting more into like having stuff in the front, gallery in the back, white cube in the back. Um,
Well, it's good because it generates revenue, you know, like with like the art market kind of being
yeah.
like where it is. I mean, I know when we had the show um at Eleanor Harwood's gallery, there she has a back room, and she asked us to curate a small show, and we curated a show of like, because Liz and I, even though that was the first time we had met, we have a ton of people in common, because she was very active in the SF music scene when she lived here.
Mm.
Do you know her
Mhm.
in LA?
We live
Ever?
about 5 minutes walking away. Like I could walk
She's
to her
so
house right
cool.
now. Yeah.
Give her a high
I
five
will.
for
I'll
me
be like
still.
phew, up the hill. I mean, I'm not going to walk anywhere until like 9 p.m. today,
No,
but
no, don't do that.
yeah,
Don't do
it's too
that.
hot. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that show was all like friends that make music and art, and everything was priced like lower, and I think a lot of things in that smaller shows like sold, and that's something that I keep seeing like when I see the smaller shows in the back galleries, because it's usually like
More
um
accessible work. Yeah. More
yeah.
accessibly priced. Yeah, it's so hard. I don't know. I mean, I was talking to someone and they like weren't familiar with the art world and they were like, "Oh, can I buy a painting of their friend?" And they were saying how like they didn't know what the art world was like and then they tried to buy a friend's painting and they're like, "Oh, I would love to, but like this is the price and I would have to extend that price to you, but no one's buying it. So I would love the money, but I can't because that's just how it works." And then, and so like you're kind of forced into this game of like, are you going to be the artist who just doesn't play that game and you don't care about your art market? You just like, sell for accessible prices? Or are you the artist who
Mhm.
like right now, like for me, I'm like, I need money. Like I wish I could just drop my prices. But then the lasting effect of that, like, what there's all these negative things that could happen as a result of that. So like you
I mean, I think
yeah.
it would be cool if like the public had a better understanding of like that when you sell things in a gallery, the gallery is going to take 50%.
Yeah.
So if you're going to buy it straight from the artist,
They're not gonna discount. I'm
you
not
know,
like I don't
yeah,
discount 50% just because they're buying it from me. Cause it's like everything that gallery was gonna do, I'm now doing for myself. And so
totally.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. Is that what were you gonna say to discount?
I don't do 50% discounts, but I like, um, I mean, it's honestly, it's something that I've been grappling with because, like, going from selling at these shows like West Coast Craft where, like, people are you're like, "This vase is, like, $800." And, like, some people will be like, "Oh my god," you know?
Mhm.
And then some people will be like, "I love it, I'll take it." Like, and then
It
so
is really
taking this vase.
context, right? Like,
Yeah. And if I'm selling that in a gallery, I'm not gonna mark it up 50% because I feel like where I am in my career, I don't know if it would sell and I just need stuff to sell. So I will take a little bit of a hit when if I sell it in a gallery because they're doing I mean, that's just like making my CV better. I mean, that's like right now for where I am, I'm still pretty much like emerging, I think.
yeah. And also, I mean, galleries like it when you sell, and that's how you get momentum essentially. It's like you sell more and the galleries want to work with you more, you know?
Yeah.
So that's another
Yeah.
reason why it's tricky, but
Pricing is always tricky, like no matter what,
yeah.
because I mean, for me, like the things like working with clay, like on the scale that I've been working with to make these like larger amphora, like that practice of building up my skills to make work that large has been like years in the making. And it's not like you can be like, it took me 10 years to learn how to do this. And you're going to like, the piece needs to compensate me for that 10 years or I spent not making any money, but like working on it, which of course you wouldn't do. But it's always like, because at the end of the day, some people are like, well, how much did it cost
Yeah. I've
for the
actually,
materials?
yeah.
How much did it cost for your studio rent? And it's like, hey, guess what? I live in SF where the rent is insane,
You're like, if we're
you
going to
know?
go based on that, then I'm going to triple the price because you're in San Francisco. So just be
Yeah.
grateful it is the price that it is right now because I'm
Yeah.
still
And
cutting
I think
myself
that,
short.
I think like when you're in a gallery setting too, people are not gonna, like, people will try to like
Oh,
barter
yeah, they
with the
definitely
gallerist,
do.
but
You
like,
just don't have to deal with it because you're not the
you don't have to deal with it. But at in person craft shows, like, I have had people say super offensive things to me about how my work is priced or like,
Mm.
I could make that for $1. And
Yeah.
I'm like, but you didn't. And go ahead and try.
You
You
should
know?
try. That's you'd be like, "Go
Yeah.
for it, girlfriend, like,
Yeah.
get your Sculpey out and
It's
try to
not
make
hard.
this. I dare you."
Yeah.
Yeah, I will not sell to this person who I, like, was on a podcast talking about it already, so I won't go too into it, but
Okay.
basically, I was gonna sell some pieces out of my studio, and they were, like, really expecting a 50% discount. 'Cause they were like, "Oh, well, but, like, this is just out of your studio," and I'm like, "Yeah, but, like, I'm a small business, so I don't mark it down." Like, I maybe offered him, like, 10% or 15%, but I'm like, "I'm not gonna
Yeah.
give you, like, 50%," and he's like, "Oh, but they're small paintings," and I'm like, "Yeah, but, like, I'm doing so much work in my studio that, like, for all the things factored in, like, that's part of the overhead that I have to, like, consider." And he's like, "Ah,"
Yeah.
and, so I was just like, "Well, okay, you're not gonna buy paintings from me now, that's okay, but you're also never gonna have access to them again. So, bye." Like, I got a message saying that he was reaching out to someone else to try to get a painting for me, and she's like, "Oh, they reached out to me and asked about you," and I was like, "No." So if you're
Contraband.
listening to this podcast and you know this is you, that no, I'm just kidding. I might cut that out because I'm like, no, whatever. I'm not going to be a dick, but I just feel like, it's not really that respectful. Like we get to choose who we sell our work to, especially if you're not working with a gallery. Like I can get the money a different way. Like I don't need
Yeah.
someone to make me feel like I'm not worthy of getting paid a fair amount. I mean, that's just the bottom line.
Yeah. Definitely.
And that said, I know it's a luxury business, but when someone who, like, understands that tries to cut you down, that's when it's kinda shady because it's like, you're not just someone off the street, like, not who doesn't know the business, you're just trying to get a good deal.
Yeah, and I think that, like, especially in person, like, if you're in person with someone talking about that stuff, people will take, like, really insulting liberties sometimes, like, where they don't consider, like, you as a small business owner. It's like they think you're just, like, a person that's, like, lackadaisically, like, "Blah, blah, blah, I'm gonna make,"
Yeah, who knows what
like,
they
not
think?
it's not your life's passion, like.
Well, like, they're not doing it, and so they probably it's like there's a little bit envy, like, "I wish my life could be so nice like yours," and blah, 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 and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm grateful that anyone has paid me to do what I love and that I do get to spend a lot of time doing it right now." But
But
it's
your
not
work is
easy.
freaking awesome.
You have to do a lot of internal work to stay creative and in the flow. Like, if you get
Mhm.
blocked, like, that's it. You're screwed. And to not be blocked all the time is actually a huge amount of emotional labor.
It
You
definitely
know?
is, yeah.
That's
Like,
honestly why I started this podcast, is like, to be a good productive artist, you constantly have to be relying on something. Like, whether it's like the artist's way or therapy or addiction
mhm.
recovery or like all of the things, spiritual practices, witchcraft, astrology, like, it takes a village just to keep your mind open and receptive.
Yeah, it's just like this little hungry creature you gotta, like, feed all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your little inner child. Um, so what do you have coming up? Like, what can people expect to find out? This will probably air next week. So,
Oh, okay. Right now I have a solo show at Park Life Gallery. It's called Come Back to Yourself,
oh, cool.
and it'll be up till September 15th in San Francisco, and, in October, I have, like, a top secret, collaboration project that I'm doing with another artist that, I'm not gonna say anything about yet, but I'm, like, super stoked about it. Um, and
Stay
of
tuned for
course,
that.
stay tuned for that. And at Pinckney Clay, there's, like, an artist window section where, I feature, different artists. In October, I always love to have a ghost window, which is just, like, a display of, like, different types of ceramic ghosts that I've made. And in October, I pull out the big ghosts, like the giant closed form, like wood fired ghosts that I've made into, like, lamps. So you'll see these, like, kind of really burnt and crunchy, gooey looking textures that are illuminated from within. And this year, I bought the party bulbs. So I don't know if you've heard of
Yes.
those.
We're going to be
They
tripping
change
out.
colors. You just put them inside, and they're like,
Yeah.
there's turn
I think
different. I
that's
don't know.
something we
It's
didn't really address, which is you're making ghost ceramic objects. Like, they're little like ghosts with like a sheet over them, like old school.
they're like, they look there's, like, small ones that look like fingers. They're just like little kind of little cylinders that are kinda squiggly with just, like, eye holes and a mouth hole, and those are the small ones that are all handmade by me. So when you put them all together, they look, there's, like, almost like a musicality that happens because each one is moving in a different direction. Oh, I have some right here.
Oh, there we go.
So these are
Yay!
some that are,
Oh,
like, from
cute.
this one's from, like, these are from atmospheric firings that I this one I did. This is, like, a wood-fired spirit from, a firing I did at the Cobb Mountain
You do some
Center
kind
for
of
Art
like
and College.
connecting with them as you're firing? Do you like imbue them with any special?
Well, the ones from the atmospheric firings, those ones are fired in, like, a Japanese kiln, like an onigama, which is just, like, the Japanese word for kiln. And, it's basically like these, like, brick structures that are powered only by, like, wood. Like, so you just, like, light wood on fire, and you're, like, building up the wood ash in all these different ways over. Sometimes, like, there'll be a 7-day firing or, like, a 3-day firing, but the wood ash gets so hot that it vaporizes and becomes like a glaze inside of the chamber. So everything in the chamber is gonna get coated with this wood ash in different ways. And I like, with the spirits in, you can kinda see here, this is some nice
Oh,
wood ash
nice. Yeah.
right there, but everywhere in the kiln kind of gets a different splashing of this effect, depending on like where it is or what's by it, or like is the flame touching it. There are also all these like Japanese terms for all of these effects. Um, but with these, I think about them as like little witnesses to every spot in the kiln, because everywhere you put it, you're gonna get like a different appearance
Mhm.
because of the placement in the
I
kiln.
see different
So like
color density.
yeah, because for me, I wish that I could be inside of there to see everything that's happening, but of course I can't because I would burn up. These are just like little ways that I can be all over the space and have some type of recording of like the firing. Like that's kind of what those ones are about. But then I have much larger, like closed form ones that are probably about 18 inches tall, 15 inches tall. And those ones are the ones that I've created lamps or like illuminated spirits with.
Oh, well, I can't wait to see that. I love Halloween. I just love the fall.
Yeah.
It's like it
Yeah.
hits my chart really nice, and I just
Mhm.
always feel like things are nice in the fall. I don't know. It's really around your
Fall's the
birthday
best.
that things go south for me, usually. Like, it's like February through, like, end of April, it usually sucks a D, if you will.
I'm sorry to hear
It's
that.
okay. I think it's just how, like, it all goes, the cycle. Everyone's got a time of the year that's, like, a little rougher.
I mean, the fall is like the best
It
time because
is,
it's the
right?
for me too, I feel like when the fall comes, my like I'm just like, now is my time. Like that's kind of how it
Oh my
feels to
god,
me.
so funny. I wonder why. What's your rising sign, do you know?
I have no idea,
Oh, really?
honestly.
You
I don't
strike me
know.
as someone who would know their full chart in and out.
I don't. No, I just like sometimes I'll read, like I'll get a reading done, but these days my memory is just so bad. People will tell me stuff and the next day it's like
Oh,
it's
yeah.
gone.
That's like the
Yeah.
business owner thing. I feel like you've got too much going on. Cannot
There's
be
a lot
bothered.
going on. Yeah. But definitely inspired by you and what you do, Sarah, and it makes me want to know my chart.
Oh, yeah. Let's look it up
Yeah.
after this.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much, Holly. This was so wonderful. I love your work, and I think you're so fun to do karaoke with, and you're fearless as a business owner. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
That's all for this week's episode. Thanks for side wooing with us. We release episodes every other week on Thursday. You can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Please rate, follow, subscribe, and review our podcast for good karma points. Until we meet again in the side room.